Kunle thinks he has the perfect setup: a thriving business, a flashy mistress he flaunts in his own living room, and a timid, pregnant wife he believes is too local to ever fight back. He mistakes Simi's silence for submission, completely unaware that he is sharing a bed with a retired underground fighting legend who once dismantled men twice his size for sport. But tonight, fueled by arrogance, he will make the fatal mistake of raising his hand against her, and in a split second, the facade will crumble. He is about to discover that the woman he called weak has been protecting him from her true self all along, and now, the protection is gone. Hey there, pour a cup of tea, get comfy, and let your heart listen. You've tuned into Tales Vibe, where laughter and lessons flow together. We are about to unlock a seriously juicy story, so make sure you smash that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a beat. Don't forget to like this video and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to meet our story family. 5 years ago, in the heart of Surulere, the underground fighting ring was packed with men screaming for blood. In the center stood Simi. She did not look like a monster, but the local gamblers called her the mechanic because she didn't just fight people, she dismantled them. Her opponent was a man named Bode, a giant with fists like heavy stones. He roared and swung a wild punch at her head. Simi did not blink. She ducked under the blow, smooth like water. Her movement was precise. Pop pop. 2 quick jabs to his ribs took his breath away. As Bode bent forward, gasping, Simi spun. Her elbow connected with his jaw. It was a clean, sharp sound that silenced the front row. Bode hit the dusty floor and did not move. The referee counted to 3, but everyone knew it was over. Simi looked at her wrapped hands. She looked at the angry, shouting crowd. She felt nothing. No joy, only a deep tiredness. She untied her hand wraps and dropped them in the center of the ring. "I am done," she said. She walked out of the noise, leaving the mechanic behind. She wanted peace. She wanted to be a woman, not a weapon. 6 months later, Simi was in a different world. She stood in an expensive event hall in Victoria Island, wearing a crisp server's uniform. She held a tray of small chops, puff puff, and samosas, moving quietly among the rich guests. She kept her head bowed and her eyes low. She had become invisible. Kunle sat at the VIP table, looking bored. He was a rising star in the import business, dressed in a white agbada that looked like it cost millions. He watched the loud Lagos girls dancing and laughing too hard, trying to get his attention. He hated the noise. Then he saw Simi. He watched how she moved silently, how she didn't look for attention or try to impress anyone. When she brought the tray to his table, he stopped her. "You are very quiet," Kunle said, looking at her face. "I like that. Too many women in this Lagos are too loud. You seem gentle." Simi looked up, carefully hiding her scarred knuckles under the silver tray. She gave him a shy smile, the kind she had practiced in the mirror. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. Kunle smiled back, thinking he had found a simple, weak girl he could mold into the perfect obedient wife. He asked for her number. Simi gave it to him, thinking she had finally found safety. Kunle did not know he was looking at a sleeping tiger. He did not know that the quietest woman in the room was the only one who could kill him with her bare hands. The courtship moved faster than a Lagos Danfo driver in traffic. Within 3 months, Kunle had paid the bride price. He didn't ask about her past, and Simi didn't offer it. He simply wanted a woman who would look good in pictures and keep his home quiet. They moved into a massive white duplex in Lekki, a house with high gates and cold marble floors. Simi embraced her new role. She buried the mechanic deep inside. She replaced her boxing wraps with a wedding ring and her punching bag with pots of soup. She woke up at 5 a.m. to clean a house that was already clean. She cooked fresh edikong ikong and pounded yam before Kunle even opened his eyes. She thought this was what love looked like, service. But to Kunle, her service looked like desperation. The mystery he first liked quickly became annoyance. He started to treat her silence not as peace, but as stupidity. One morning, while Simi was ironing his senator outfit, Kunle was on a call with his business partner. Forget that one," Kunle laughed into the phone, not caring that Simi was right there. My wife? No. She doesn't know anything about business. She is just a local girl. As long as she cooks and opens her legs, she is fine. She is a proper muumuu, very obedient. Simi's hand paused on the iron. The heat radiated up her arm. A year ago, she would have broken the jaw of any man who spoke to her like that. Now, she just pressed the iron harder onto the fabric, smoothing out the wrinkles, pretending she didn't hear. Then came Mama Kunle. If Kunle was indifferent, his mother was a weapon. She arrived on a Sunday afternoon, dragging 3 suitcases, ready to inspect her son's investment. She was a large woman with a voice that cut like broken glass. She walked into the living room and wiped a finger on the center table, checking for dust that wasn't there. Kunle, Mama shouted, ignoring Simi, who was kneeling to greet her. Is this the best you could do? A nobody from nowhere? I told you to marry Chief Badmus's daughter. That one has connections. This one only has what? Big eyes and a village attitude. Simi served her a tray of rice and chicken. Mama Kunle took 1 spoon, chewed slowly, and spat it back onto the plate. Tasteless, Mama hissed. Just like her. Simi looked at Kunle, waiting for him to defend her, waiting for him to say, Mama, respect my wife. Instead, Kunle just sipped his juice and shrugged. Manage it, Mama. You know she is not exposed like us. She is trying her best for a bush girl. Simi lowered her head to hide the fire starting to burn in her chest. She collected the plates silently. They thought she was weak because she was quiet. They didn't know that the quietest rivers drown people the fastest. 2 years dragged by in that cold marble house. Simi learned to make herself smaller and smaller, like a shadow that disappears when the sun is too bright. She thought she had nothing left to offer until the morning she stared at the 2 red lines on the pregnancy test. A baby. For the first time in months, a genuine smile touched her lips. She thought, this is it. This is what will bring him back. A child changes a man. It will make him soft again. She waited up for him that night. Kunle walked in at 11 p.m., smelling of stale air conditioner and stress. Simi met him at the door, her eyes shining. Welcome home, Okomi, she said, taking his briefcase. I have news. Good news. Kunle loosened his tie, looking bored. Make it fast, Simi. I have an early meeting with the customs boys tomorrow. I am pregnant, she whispered, her hands trembling with joy. We are going to have a baby. She waited for the hug. She waited for him to spin her around like they do in the movies. Instead, Kunle stopped unbuttoning his shirt. He looked at her stomach, then at her face, with a look that wasn't love. It was annoyance. Are you serious? He asked, letting out a long sigh. Now? When I am in the middle of the biggest territory expansion of my life. I need peace, Simi, not crying and nappies. But it is a blessing, Simi stammered, her heart sinking. Kunle walked past her to the fridge. Just make sure you don't get fat and lazy, he threw over his shoulder. I cannot deal with a wife who lets herself go. And don't expect me to be changing diapers. That is your job. That night, Simi cried silently into her pillow so she wouldn't wake the man snoring beside her. But the tears were just the beginning. As her belly grew, Kunle vanished. The late nights at the office became overnight trips. When he did come home, he didn't smell like stress anymore. He smelled of Baccarat Rouge and expensive floral perfumes that Simi could never afford. He stopped eating her food. I ate at a meeting, he would say, walking past a table set with his favorite dishes. He changed the password on his phone. When Simi walked into the room, he would quickly turn the screen down. He treated her less like a wife and more like an inconvenient piece of furniture he couldn't figure out how to sell. Simi stopped asking questions. She stopped waiting up. She spent her days in the nursery, rubbing her swollen belly. It's just you and me, she whispered to the unborn child, her voice thick with a sadness that was slowly hardening into something else. He thinks I am stupid. He thinks I don't see. But don't worry. Mommy is not weak. Mommy is just waiting. The waiting ended on a rainy Tuesday evening. The Lekki traffic usually kept Kunle out until late, but today, The gate slid open at 6 p.m. Simi was in the living room, resting her swollen feet on a poof, wearing a loose tie-dye bubu. She heard the front door open, followed by a sound that made her blood run cold. Kunle was laughing. It was a light, carefree sound she hadn't heard directed at her since their honeymoon. He walked in, but he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was a woman who looked like she had walked straight out of an Instagram Explore page. She wore a tight, neon-orange dress that left nothing to the imagination, heels that clacked sharply against the marble, and a bone-straight wig that reached her waist. She was chewing gum loudly, her long acrylic nails tapping against an iPhone 15 Pro Max. This was Tola. Simi stood up clumsily, her hand instinctively going to her 6-month-old belly. The air in the room shifted instantly. The woman smelled like a duty-free shop, overpoweringly sweet. Kunle? Simi asked, her voice small. The woman, Tola, stopped chewing and looked Simi up and down. Her eyes lingered on Simi's unmade hair, her bare face, and her protruding stomach. She smirked, a cruel twisting of red lips. "So, this is the madam?" Tola asked, turning to Kunle. Her voice was high and mocking. "You didn't tell me she was so traditional."
Kunle didn't even look at Simi.
He adjusted his agbada, looking unbothered. "Tola is a new business partner. We have some contracts to review for the port expansion. We are going to the study. Do not disturb us." "Business partner?" Simi repeated. She wasn't stupid. Business partners didn't hold onto your bicep like that. Business partners didn't look at your wife like she was a stain on the rug. "Yes, business," Kunle snapped. "Something you know nothing about. Tola, let's go." Tola gave a small, victorious wave to Simi, wiggling her fingers before strutting toward the staircase. "Nice house, Shah," she threw over her shoulder. "Needs better curtains, though." They walked past the living room and up the stairs. Simi stood frozen at the bottom of the steps. She watched them enter the study, the room Kunle forbade her from cleaning. Click. The sound of the lock turning echoed through the silent house. Simi stood there for a long time. Then she heard it. Not the sound of papers shuffling or contracts being signed. She heard giggling. Low, intimate laughter. The clinking of glasses. Her hands, resting on her belly, began to shake. But they weren't shaking from fear. Slowly, unconsciously, her fingers curled inward. Her thumb wrapped over her index and middle finger, locking them tight. It was the muscle memory of a fighter forming a fist. She stared at the closed door upstairs, the tiger inside her scratching at the cage. The intrusion had begun, and the war was coming. That locked door was just the beginning. Tola didn't stop coming. In fact, she started arriving before Kunle did. She would breeze past the security guard at the gate who was too afraid of Oga to stop her, and walk into the house like she owned the title deed. By the second week, Tola wasn't just a business partner in the study anymore. She was everywhere. She sat in the living room, filing her nails, watching Z World on the big television. When Simi walked in, heavy with the baby and exhausted from cleaning, Tola didn't even look up. "Madam," Tola called out one afternoon, not using Simi's name. She pointed to her empty glass with a long, fake nail. "The AC is too cold, and my throat is dry. Bring me cold water. Not tap water, oh, bring the bottled one." Simi stood there holding a laundry basket. The disrespect was so sharp it almost cut her skin. She looked at Tola, then at the empty glass. "The kitchen is there," Simi said softly. Tola laughed, a dry, crackling sound. "I know where the kitchen is. But Kunle said you like to serve. So, serve." Simi didn't argue. She set down the basket, went to the kitchen, and brought the water. She placed it on the table. She wasn't doing it out of fear. She was doing it because a good fighter observes their opponent before they strike. She was learning Tola's movements, her arrogance, her blindness. Later that evening, while Simi was pounding peppers for stew in the kitchen, the voices drifted in from the dining area. Kunle had returned, and they were eating the food Simi had cooked, without inviting her to the table. "Babe," Tola's voice carried clearly. "Why are you still keeping this village girl? Look at her. She wears rags. She doesn't speak. She is just there. You are a big man now. You need a woman who shines. Simi stopped pounding. The pestle hovered in the air. She waited for Kunle to defend her. She waited for him to say she was the mother of his child. Don't mind her, Kunle replied, his mouth full of meat. She is useful. She gives me no stress, no walla. She is weak, Tola. Totally dependent on me. If I kick her out, she will suffer. I'm just doing charity work by keeping her here. But don't worry, you're the one I want. Simi slowly lowered the pestle. The sound of pepper crushing against stone was gone. The only sound was her own heartbeat, slow and heavy. She wiped her hands on her wrapper. The tears didn't come this time. Tears were for the weak woman Kunle thought she was. The woman standing in the kitchen now was cold, hard, and ready for the bell to ring. That night, the air in the master bedroom was heavy. Kunle was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone, likely texting Tola. Simi stood by the doorway. She had washed the smell of peppers from her hands. She was wearing a simple nightgown, her belly round and prominent. She looked at the man she had married, the man who had just called her a charity case. She decided to give him one last chance. Not for herself, but for the unborn child.
Kunle, she said.
Her voice was not loud, but it was steady. Kunle didn't look up. I am busy, Simi. Go to sleep. I know what is happening, she continued, stepping into the room. I know about Tola. I know what you said in the dining room. Kunle's thumb stopped scrolling. He finally looked up, his eyes cold and bored. So? You are eavesdropping? That is very rude. I am your wife, Simi said, fighting the urge to raise her voice. I am carrying your child. This disrespect must stop. You cannot bring her into my house anymore. You have to choose, Kunle. It is either that street girl or your family. For a moment, there was silence. Simi held her breath, hoping to see a flicker of shame in his eyes, hoping he would apologize. Then Kunle laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was a deep, belly-shaking laugh that echoed off the walls. He stood up and walked toward her, shaking his head like she had told a very funny joke. Choose, he repeated, wiping a tear of laughter from his eye. You are giving me an ultimatum? You? He stepped closer, looming over her. Simi, look at yourself. You are 6 months pregnant. You have no job. You have no money. You have no family name. If I throw you out of this gate tonight, where will you go? Under the bridge? Back to the gutter in Mushin? Simi stood her ground, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. I am your wife, she whispered. You are a wife, Kunle corrected sharply. You are not my only option. And you are certainly not the boss here. Let me tell you the reality of your life, Simi. You eat because I buy food. You sleep because I paid for this bed. You exist because I allow it. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. So, don't ever stand there and tell me to choose. You don't have the power to demand anything. Now, get out of my face before I lose my temper. Kunle turned his back on her and went into the bathroom, slamming the door. Simi stood alone in the center of the room. The last piece of hope inside her chest didn't break, it evaporated. She looked at the closed bathroom door. Her face didn't crumble. Her shoulders didn't shake. Instead, a strange calm settled over her. It was the calm of a fighter who has finished studying their opponent and is waiting for the bell to ring. Okay, she whispered to the empty room. Okay. 2 weeks of silence followed. Simi moved through the house like a ghost, while Kunle treated her like she was invisible. She didn't argue anymore. She didn't beg. She just watched. It was a Sunday afternoon when the dam finally broke. Simi had gone to the market to buy baby supplies with the little cash she had saved. She returned home tired, her legs swollen, carrying heavy bags of diapers. She unlocked the front door and froze. The living room air conditioner was blasting cold air. Sitting on her favorite imported leather sofa was Tola. But it wasn't just that she was there, it was what she was doing. Tola was holding Simi's wedding mug, the white one with Mrs. Adebayo printed in gold, sipping red wine from it. Kunle sat on the floor in front of her, rubbing Tola's feet as if she were the pregnant wife who needed rest. They looked up as Simi entered. Kunle didn't even drop Tola's foot. "Good, you are back," Kunle said, checking his wristwatch. "We're hungry. Go and pound yam. Tola wants egusi soup with goat meat. Make sure it is plenty." Simi dropped the bags on the floor.
Thud.
She looked at the mug in Tola's hand. She looked at her husband kneeling like a servant for his mistress, while his pregnant wife carried loads. "No," Simi said. The word was soft, but it hung in the air like smoke. Kunle frowned. "What did you say?" "I said no," Simi repeated, her voice rising slightly. "I am not cooking for her. And she needs to leave.
Now.
This is my house." Tola burst out laughing. She took a long sip from Simi's mug and looked at Kunle. "Babe, did you hear that? The mute can speak." She turned to Simi, her eyes full of pity. "Oh, sweetie, you really think you have a say here? Look at you. You are heavy and useless. Just do as you are told." Kunle stood up slowly. His face was dark. He felt disrespected in front of his mistress. His ego was bruised. "Simi," Kunle warned, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't try me today. I told you your place. You are embarrassing yourself." "You are the one embarrassing yourself," Simi shot back, her hands trembling not from fear, but from the adrenaline flooding her system. "Bringing a woman into our home? Disrespecting the mother of your child." "Mother of my child?"
Kunle scoffed.
"You are just an incubator. Now, get to the kitchen before I lose my patience." "I won't," Simi said, standing her ground. Tola sighed dramatically. "Kunle, handle your woman. She is too bold." Kunle took a step forward, his eyes locked on Simi. The air in the room turned electric. The quiet wife was gone. The tiger was awake. Kunle closed the distance in 2 angry strides. The air in the room felt thick, like the moment before thunder strikes. "You have mouth now, ABI?" Kunle shouted, his voice shaking the glass windows. "I will teach you manners today." He reached out and grabbed Simi's shoulder, his fingers digging into her skin. He shoved her backward. It wasn't a play shove. It was violent. Simi stumbled, her feet slipping on the polished tiles, but her hands instantly flew to cover her belly. She regained her balance, her breath hitching. "Don't touch me," Simi warned, her voice dropping an octave. It sounded like metal grinding on stone. "Or what?"
Kunle sneered.
"What will you do? You weak thing." He raised his right hand high, palm open, aiming a heavy slap at her face to humiliate her. Tola watched from the sofa, a cruel smile playing on her lips, waiting for the sound of flesh hitting flesh. But the sound never came.
Wham!
In a blur that the human eye could barely follow, Simi's left hand shot up. She caught Kunle's wrist inches from her face. The smack of her palm stopping his momentum echoed through the room. Kunle's eyes went wide. He tried to pull his hand back, but he couldn't. Her grip was not the grip of a housewife. It was the iron hand of Mushin. It was a vice. "I said no," Simi whispered. She stepped in, pivoting her hips smoothly to protect her stomach. She rotated Kunle's wrist outward, against the joint. Snap. "Yeah." Kunle screamed, his knees buckling as the pain shot up his arm. He was a big man, but leverage is stronger than size. Simi forced him down, twisting his arm behind his back until his face was pressed against the cold tiles. "Jesus!" Tola shrieked, jumping up. "Are you mad?" Seeing her meal ticket on the floor, Tola grabbed the heavy wine bottle from the table. She rushed at Simi, swinging the bottle like a club. Simi didn't panic. She didn't even let go of Kunle. She waited for Tola to get into range. As Tola swung, Simi ducked slightly and snapped a precise, low sidekick into Tola's kneecap. Crunch. Tola's leg gave way instantly. She collapsed in a heap of expensive fabric and hair extensions, the bottle rolling harmlessly away. She wailed, clutching her knee. Kunle, desperate and humiliated, tried to punch Simi's leg with his free hand. Simi looked down at him. She released his broken wrist, stepped back to avoid the punch, and delivered a swift, controlled sweep to his ankles.
Bosa.
Kunle's chest hit the floor hard. Before he could rise, Simi dropped her knee onto his shoulder to pin him. She raised her elbow and stopped it just an inch from his nose. "Do you want me to finish it?" she asked, her breathing steady, her eyes burning with cold fire. Kunle froze, staring up at the woman he thought was weak. He saw death in her eyes. He stopped moving. Simi stood up slowly, adjusted her bubu, and looked at the two people writhing on her floor. The tiger had eaten. The silence that followed the fight was heavier than the humid Lagos air. The only sounds were Tola's soft whimpering as she clutched her swelling knee and Kunle's ragged breathing. He lay on his back, cradling his broken wrist, staring at the ceiling in shock. He wasn't just in pain. His ego had been shattered into dust. Simi did not run to help them. She did not apologize. Instead, she walked calmly to the center table and picked up Kunle's iPhone. She walked back to where Kunle lay. "Look at me," she commanded. Kunle tried to turn away, but Simi nudged his ribs with her foot. He flinched and looked up. She held the phone in front of his face. The Face ID unlocked the device with a soft click. What are you doing?" Kunle gasped, sweat dripping down his forehead. "I am securing my future," Simi replied coolly. Her fingers moved fast. She went to his banking app, his WhatsApp, his gallery. She forwarded bank transfer receipts sent to Tola, incriminating chats about his illegal import deals and messages mocking Simi to his friends. She sent everything to her own secure email and cloud storage. "You think because I was quiet, I was blind?" Simi asked, her voice flat. "I have been gathering evidence for months. Today was just the day I decided to use it."
She tossed the phone onto his chest.
"Now listen carefully because I will only say this once. You're going to call your lawyer. You're going to draft a settlement agreement tonight." Kunle tried to sit up, wincing. "You can't blackmail me. I am Kunle Adebayo. I will call the police." Simi laughed. It was a terrifying sound because it had no humor in it. "Call them. Please. Let them come and see the famous Lagos big boy beaten by his pregnant wife. Let them see your mistress crying on the floor. Then I will release the chats about your smuggling deals to the customs officers and the blogs. Instablog will love this story. Mafia boss beaten by wife." Kunle's face went pale. He knew his reputation was everything. If his business partners knew he was weak, or if the authorities saw his chats, he was finished. "What do you want?" he whispered, defeated. "I want the house," Simi listed, ticking off her fingers. "Full ownership. I want full custody of my child. And I want 50 million naira transferred to my account by tomorrow morning as startup capital for the years I wasted serving you." 50 million? Tola gasped from the corner. "You are a thief." Simi turned her cold gaze to Tola. "And you," she said, "you will disappear. If I ever see you near my child or my business, I will finish what I started with your knee. Do you understand?" Tola nodded frantically, mascara running down her face. Simi looked back at Kunle. "Do we have a deal? Or should I post the pictures now?" Kunle closed his eyes. The pain in his arm was throbbing, but the realization that he had lost everything to the moo-moo wife was worse. "I will sign," he croaked. "Just don't release the chats." Simi smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good boy." The ambulance lights flashed blue and red against the white walls of the Lekki mansion, cutting through the night. Simi met the paramedics at the door, her face a mask of concern. "He slipped on the stairs," she told them calmly, pointing to Kunle, who was being loaded onto a stretcher, his face pale and swollen. "And the lady tried to help him and fell too. Please take care of them." Kunle looked at Simi one last time before the doors closed. He didn't see a wife. He saw a stranger who had outplayed him at his own game. He didn't dare speak the truth. He told the doctors he fell. He told his mother he fell. He signed the divorce papers with his left hand because his right arm was in a cast for 6 weeks. The transfer of assets was swift. Kunle moved out in shame, his reputation in tatters after rumors, started subtly by Simi's lawyer, spread that he had lost his mind and his money. Tola disappeared back into the Lagos nightlife, her knee permanently stiff, a limp reminding her daily of the woman she mocked. The gate closed behind them, and for the first time in 3 years, The house was silent. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was the silence of peace. 3 years later, the sign above the building in Victoria Island read, Iron Lotus Defense Academy. Inside, the mats were full. 30 women, bankers in expensive activewear, university students and market women, stood in rows, sweating and focused. Again, Simi shouted. She walked through the lines, her posture straight, her muscles defined under her black training gear. When he grabs you, do not pull away. Step in. Use his power against him. She demonstrated the move on a punching dummy, her strike fast and explosive. The class watched in awe. She was not just teaching them to fight. She was teaching them to stop being victims. Mama, a little girl, 3 years old with bright eyes and bouncy braids, ran onto the mat.
It was Tiara.
Simi's face softened instantly. She scooped her daughter up, kissing her cheek. Did you see me, Mama? I was strong. Tiara giggled, making a tiny fist. Simi smiled, looking at the women in the room who were finding their voices, and then at the daughter who would never have to lose hers. Yes, my love, Simi whispered, hugging her tight. You are strong. But remember what I told you. Yes, Tiara chirped. Being quiet is not being weak. Correct, Simi said, looking into the camera lens of her life, her eyes clear and unburdened. We are quiet so we can hear them coming. And when they come, we show them that even a tiger does not roar before it bites. Simi Adebayo was no longer the invisible wife. She was the quiet tiger, and she was finally free. And that's the end of today's tale. We hope it brought a smile, a thought, or a little bit of magic to your day. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to Tales Vibe for more weekly tales, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our story family all around the world. Until next time, keep your heart open, your imagination alive, and remember, laughter and lessons always go hand in hand. See you in the next story.